July 1943, Operation Citadel was Hitler's attempt to recover the initiative on the Eastern Front after Stalingrad. German High Command assigned the offensive a simple operational purpose: strike the Kursk bulge from north and south, surround Soviet forces inside it, and eliminate the formation. The plan committed almost 50 divisions, including 17 motorized or armored divisions. Its geometry looked conventional. The opposing force had already identified the likely axis of advance. May to July 5, 1943, Hitler delayed the offensive while Soviet preparations multiplied. British intelligence warned Soviet forces of the German plan hours before the attack began. Around the salient, 300,000 civilian laborers helped construct defensive works. Soviet engineers laid 943,000 mines. That was not merely an obstacle count. It was nearly 1 million separate decisions forced upon an advancing crew before it could reach the main line. July 5, 1943 opened Citadel with a third engagement before tanks met en masse, the air battle. Britannica records it as the single costliest day in aerial warfare history by aircraft shot down. Both commands judged ground forces insufficient and committed aircraft specially designed or equipped to attack tanks. A battlefield already scheduled for armored penetration now had another destructive layer moving above every road, trench, and assembly area. The air order of battle reflected the wider imbalance. One account places Axis strength at about 1,800 aircraft against 2,100 Soviet aircraft. Another lists 2,000 German and 2,400 Soviet aircraft. The exact totals vary, but the operational condition does not. Both sides concentrated air power at Kursk on an exceptional scale. Dust clouds across the battlefield also interfered with Luftwaffe support for German ground formations. On the northern axis, General Walter Model's Ninth Army carried one arm of the encirclement plan. Its route ran toward Olkhovatka and ultimately Kursk. Soviet defense was organized in belts, anti-tank weapons, artillery, minefields, and prepared positions. A moving force had to breach each layer while its timetable was still intact. The northern pincer did not receive an open battlefield. It entered a deliberately constructed killing ground. Minefields on Model's front were not passive barriers. They channeled German vehicles into artillery-dense kill zones, where movement became predictable and concentration became dangerous. This was the defensive arithmetic of Kursk: immobilize armor, then engage it with guns already in place. German technical superiority could matter only after access was achieved. The defensive system was designed to make that preliminary task slow, visible, and expensive under fire. Nikolai Vatutin added a more intimate defensive measure. Soviet tanks were partially buried, leaving only their turrets exposed. The reduced silhouette made them harder to acquire and drew German armor closer, where shots could be more effective. A 26-ton T-34, armed with a 76.2mm gun and driven by a 500-horsepower diesel, could become a concealed firing point rather than a maneuver vehicle. The ground itself joined the Soviet order of battle. By July 9th, Model reported that reaching Kursk was now impossible. His Ninth Army had fallen just short of Olkhovatka. Northern Axis casualties reached 22,200, including 4,700 dead. For an attacking headquarters, that meant more than 20,000 men removed from the original calculation before the operational objective had been reached. The northern arm still existed. Its intended role in the encirclement did not. South of the salient, the German pincer advanced farther. Resistance forced regrouping and shifted the main effort toward Prokhorovka, intended as the southeastern route to Kursk. On July 11th, German formations approached the village from west and south. The next day's collision became the battle's most famous episode. Its reputation, however, expanded faster than the archival record. Before describing the fight, the reported scale requires inspection. July 12, 1943, was Prokhorovka even the largest tank engagement of the war. Tank Museum archival research revises the familiar image of 200 to 2,000 vehicles colliding at point-blank range. Under a narrow count, 294 German and 616 Soviet tanks were engaged, about 910 total. Including neighboring units produces 1,299, 429 German and 870 Soviet. The reported spectacle remains immense. Its scale requires a narrower archival frame. The broader historical comparison is sharper. Tank Museum research identifies the Brody-Dubno fighting of July 26 through 29, 1941 as the actual largest tank battle, about 3,500 Soviet tanks against 750 German tanks. Prokhorovka's inflated totals trace through Soviet-era propaganda and Pavel Rotmistrov's memoirs, which claimed 700 to 800 tanks on each side. Kursk remained immense. Its most repeated superlative changed under archival scrutiny. At Prokhorovka, the Soviet 5th Guards Tank Army lost 359 tanks and assault guns on July 12. 207 were irreparable. German 2 SS and 3 Panzer Corps lost 193 vehicles, but only 20 were completely destroyed. The difference matters. A disabled vehicle and a destroyed vehicle are separate categories in an armored forces recovery ledger. The battlefield produced ruin on both sides, while the immediate loss accounting remained asymmetrical. The machines were mismatched by design. The T-34 weighed 26 tons, carried a 76.2 millimeter gun, and reached 21.7 miles per hour. Germany's Tiger weighed 56 tons, mounted an 88 millimeter cannon, and combined thick armor with excellent optics but poor mobility. The Panther brought a 75 millimeter gun, yet roughly 200 combat debut vehicles suffered chronic engine, transmission, battery, and wheel failures during their first week. The southern pincer could not turn local penetration into a completed encirclement. Across July and August, 50 Tigers were lost and about 240 damaged, most during the Kursk offensive. From July 5 through 18, between 600 and 1,612 German tanks and assault guns sustained damage. The range is wide because damage accounting differs. The operational consequence was less ambiguous. Armored reserves were being consumed without the planned strategic closure. By mid-July, Soviet counteroffensives began, including Operations Kutuzov and Polkadets Rumyantsev. Citadel had been designed as a surprise assault against a bulge. Soviet forces had anticipated it, absorbed it in prepared depth, and now launched outward. Germany had concentrated more than 2,000 tanks and assault guns for the offensive. The concentration had not produced the intended encirclement. It had presented Soviet counterattacks with exhausted formations and damaged armor. The full battle ran from July 5 to August 23. Britannica estimates some 6,000 tanks, 2,000 troops, and 4,000 aircraft were involved. Another accounting places 900,000 German troops against 1,300,000 Soviet troops, with 2,700 German tanks and assault guns against 30,600 Soviet. These totals frame the three engagements: an air battle of exceptional losses, a northern attack stalled by defense in depth, and Prokhorovka's armored collision. Across the fighting, one EBSCO accounting places Soviet losses at nearly 200,000 troops and German losses at 50,000, roughly 4 Soviet losses for every German loss. The raw balance points one direction. The campaign's result pointed another. Soviet forces won decisively, and Kursk ended German offensive capability on the Eastern Front. The disproportion was therefore not a footnote to victory, but the cost borne by the force that retained the initiative. After Kursk, Germany was largely forced onto the defensive for the remainder of the war in the East. The three battles explain the outcome from different directions. Aircraft lost at unprecedented daily cost on July 5th, Model's northern timetable broken against mines and buried tanks, and Prokhorovka's famous clash, immense but numerically revised. Citadel sought one encirclement. By August 23rd, Soviet offensives had opened the next phase of the war.